Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime, where we dive deep and explore these cases that have either happened in the past or, like today's, just completed. I'm Manny Rodriguez with Deep True Crime. Thank you so much for being with me here today or whenever you watch this video. Today's video is about, let's bring this up here. It's about Ghislaine Maxwell, found guilty of sex trafficking. And this is horrible crime. You know, we've always heard about sex trafficking, right? And the dangers behind it. But this leads you into a deeper understanding of what can actually occur. You know, because in some cases you may think, well, were these women participants? Were they willing participants? But there's this thing called grooming. And I did not follow this trial. I got bits and pieces of the trial. And then when I did the story for this, that's when I had a deeper understanding of this. She has been found guilty on 5 of the 6 charges that she was faced with. And again, this is not a pretty sight at all. This stuff should not happen. And I definitely want to cover it because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of this channel is you need to be aware of what could possibly go wrong out there to you or your family. I was really torn on whether I wanted to cover this, okay? Because of the nature of this. But if my channel is going to be on what you need to be aware of that could possibly go wrong out there, then this is definitely something I need to cover. Probably fair to say, right? And so that's exactly why we're covering this story today. So who is Ghislaine Maxwell, who is now convicted of this heinous crime? Now, she was partners, business partners, mates, whatever, with Jeffrey Epstein. And that's where all of this begins. Her grooming these young girls for this sick man who had a lot of ties to famous people as well. And so we're going to explore Ghislaine. We're going to explore a little of Jeffrey Epstein and what led to all of this. Because again, this is some heinous stuff. And so Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of British newspaper who was well known, okay? She is the daughter of British newspaper baron Robert Maxwell and his French wife Elizabeth. That's Elizabeth with an S. And Ghislaine was born on December 25th, Christmas Day of 1961. She is the youngest of 9 children. The youngest of 9 children. 2 days after she was born, tragedy hit her family. Her teenage brother Michael was involved in a car accident that would keep him in a prolonged coma until he died in 1967, which is about 6 years later. And so this tragedy definitely marked the family of Ghislaine Maxwell. And so Ghislaine, she is known as a socialite, and she, you know, a socialite's going to be someone who socializes a lot, well known around the neighborhood, the area, the city. She was known as a socialite in the 1980s. And with that being said, yeah, this is something that is a bit on the heinous side. And so here she is as a socialite in the 1980s. She also traveled widely as a consultant for her father's business. She even ran a corporate gifts enterprise that her dad, Robert Maxwell, set up for her. And so, you know, she was clearly the favorite of her father. And it probably is because she was so young. She was the youngest all of the family, right? There was 9 siblings, 9 total kids, and she was the youngest. And her dad named his yacht Lady Ghislaine after the young daughter. And this was in 1986 when he named it Lady Ghislaine. And literally, it was after her, obviously, why it was done, right? And so, Robert Maxwell, again, newspaper baron, in March of 1991, he acquires the New York Daily News newspaper, well known to this day, still operating. And he purchases this from the Tribune Company. And so, he purchases this in March of 91. He sends his youngest daughter, Ghislaine, across the Atlantic to act as his emissary, to act as his business leader, the person to make all these decisions. But the following November, another tragedy would strike the family. In November of 91, he disappeared suddenly from the deck of the yacht, Lady Ghislaine, off of the Canary Islands. His body was later found floating at sea. And of course, this is a big deal for the family, obviously, right? But what would come to find out after this, which might have something to do with it, he allegedly, fraudulently appropriated over 440 million pounds. Pounds is what it's called over in for the British world out there in Britain, and apparently misappropriated 440 million. That's about 600 plus million in US dollars in pension assets from Mirror Group newspapers. And so, but no one really knows exactly why this was all done. But allegedly, he defrauded 32,000 employees to bolster his company's share price. And this debt, the surviving Maxwell family and the British government, they became liable for this. Now, 2 of Ghislaine's brothers, Ian and Kevin, they were arrested in 1992 of June. And they were charged with fraud, but they were later acquitted in January of 96. And so, this is where we learn more of could this have shaped what she was to become. So she would later settle in New York City, and she would enter the city's social life. And she even befriended billionaire Jeffrey Epstein in 1992 is when they became friends. And she was there permanently now. She was living in New York permanently. And Jeffrey Epstein, he's a former Bear Stearns trader turned consultant. And so, it looks like around 92 is when they met. Now, the exact nature of their relationship, it's not 100% clear. They might have been a couple. They definitely had, couple type tendencies. And it looks like maybe at the beginning is when they were a couple, that they might have been a romantic couple. And Epstein would tell Vanity Fair journalist Vicky Ward in 2003 that she was his best friend. And the reporter even noted she seems to organize much of his life. You are not kidding about that. And so just like the way Ghislaine's dad did when he named the yacht after her, Epstein, he starts a new venture and he names it the Ghislaine Corporation. And this is now based out of Palm Beach, Florida. It was not a success and it would dissolve 3 years later. I don't really know the purpose of the Ghislaine Corporation. And so, but that would come into play. And so later, we would find out that there are all these civil cases against Epstein. Okay? Now, in these civil cases, we would find out that these civil cases brought against Epstein, they would allege that it was during the period in the mid-90s that the pair first met a number of underage girls who would subsequently accuse Epstein of sexual abuse, including an unnamed 13-year-old music student, a teenage sisters Marie and Annie Farmer. Annie Farmer would later play a role, and they would be promised visual artists, and they would appear at New York Art Gallery after Epstein expressed an interest in one of her paintings. And so they would make it seem like, we're going to put your art up in here. So that, trying to, what would that be called? I can't think of it off the top of my head. But so in 99, Ghislaine has her first encounter with Virginia Giuffre. That's the way you pronounce it, Giuffre. And so that is the first time Maxwell would encounter Virginia Giuffre. And this was, while staying at Epstein's Florida home. And so, Virginia Giuffre, she would accuse the billionaire of sexual abuse in January of 2015, but was at the time a minor working at the Mar-a-Lago resort, which is, the resort of President or future President Donald Trump, who is now just Donald Trump again. And so that's where he lived. That was his. And so this was in January of 2015. And, by all accounts, Trump and Epstein were good friends. Mr. Trump was a friend of Epstein. Trump would even say Epstein was a terrific guy. And he praised him as a terrific guy in New York Magazine in 2002, while also remarking on his taste in young women with apparent approval. Okay, there's a difference between young women and kids. 15, 16, 17, teenagers. So even if it was an 18-year-old, that's gross. And so this does not look good for Donald Trump as well. Does not look good for Donald Trump. And so, in 2000, the pair, Ghislaine and Epstein, they attended a social gathering at the Queen's Sandringham House. This is an estate in Norfolk in Britain, in British. And, this was an invitation from her friend, Prince Andrew, who is in the limelight big time after this. But who's to say what's going to happen here? Right now, it does not look good for him. It does not look good for Prince Andrew. And it is what it is, right? So that is a little more to be found out now that this trial is over, of course. And so Miss Maxwell, she moved to a New York townhouse just a short distance from Epstein's mansion, and she moved there in 2000. And this is when they would attend this Queen's gathering. And you can see Prince Andrew, he has been pictured with Miss Giuffre. That is Miss Giuffre in this picture. And so, according to Prince Andrew, he remembers the event in question as a straightforward shooting weekend. They went there to shoot. They would give that would be something they would do, and they would shoot, I don't know, birds or who knows what they're shooting, right? And so now Miss Maxwell, she would continue as his, she would continue as his personal assistant to Epstein. And so they moved between New York, his secluded residence in Palm Beach, and New Mexico, and his private Caribbean island, Little St. James, over the next few years. And, they had high profile friends like Bill Clinton and celebrity lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who's now in the news, and BBC has even taken back an interview like, oh my God, we got to be more careful who we allow to have these interviews. So it's not really looking good for Alan either. Now, Bill Clinton's, from what I can tell, he more hung out with them. And even though he hung out a lot, I don't think that there's going to be anything that comes about him doing anything with these young girls. But more will remain to be seen on that front, right? And so, but Maxwell and Jeffrey, they are said to have been really good friends with these high profile people like Bill Clinton and Alan Dershowitz. And so now in 2005, Palm Beach began investigating Epstein, and they raided his home, they took pictures of so many different things. And this is where you can see when they raided his home, when they raided the whole thing. And so, this is court documents obtained by Fox News. The convicted sex offender allegedly used to engage in sexual activity with underage girls. And so they're going throughout the home. You can see that this is the walkthrough with the police walking through when the FBI raided it as well. And they take a lot of pictures, and you can find the pictures out there for sure. But this is where, this is an actual footage from the Palm Beach, when they raided the home. And they had pictures on the walls, literally a lot of stuff going on here. And that might be the picture of, what's her name, naked. There's a picture of Maxwell on the wall, naked. And, that's a router. And so there were all these pictures. And I don't have each picture blown up or anything, but you can see what's going on here. There goes the, part of the massage table. It's some really creepy stuff. Really creepy stuff to just see this. Really. Like, just knowing the sickness behind these people, and then to see this now, it's like, this stuff should not happen. They knew what they were doing was wrong. There's no doubt they knew what they were doing was wrong by all means. Get a little cup of my coffee here. And so this video footage is from, as you can see, Fox News Digital. Now they're going up the stairs here. Where you would even see more of what's going on out there. Sharing pictures there. Video is almost done. There goes the picture of her naked. And Ghislaine looking over a massage table. I don't know who that is. Kind of creepy. I'm glad this stuff is blurred out, because I sure don't want to look at that stuff. Well, if it wasn't blurred, I wouldn't show it either. And that's really a lot of what they came across in this video that they put together. It was more like of an hour walkthrough. And this is some of the pictures. This is some of the pictures of what you just walked through. And these pictures, with the exception of probably one or two, are used in this case against Maxwell. And you can see these pictures. They're actually clear, and you can find it online as well. So there you have it. That's a little bit of what went on in there. And so after this 2005 raid, this is where, okay, he has been found guilty. You see, in 2005, Palm Beach police began investigating Epstein after a parent accused him of molesting their 14-year-old stepdaughter at his home, having paid her $300 to massage him while naked. And so FBI, an FBI search of his home turned up 2 hidden cameras, large numbers of photos of girls, and an Amazon receipt for several books on sex slavery. That kind of gives you an idea of where his mind was. And so he pleaded guilty to procuring a child for prostitution and of soliciting a prostitute in 2008. And he served 13 months of an 18-month jail sentence. Now, this was a controversial plea deal agreed with state prosecutors. And one of those state prosecutors was a future Trump administration cabinet member, Alex Acosta, who was among them. And this allowed him to escape a heavier penalty, despite federal officials having identified at least 36 girls who would make similar allegations against him. It's obvious there's something wrong with this picture. It's so obvious. So obvious, right? I mean, no brainer obvious. And, so I'm missing one. Shoot. And so a reporter, shoot, I missed it. All right, maybe it's there somewhere and I just forgot it. And so when he's released from prison, now I will share, and it's probably going to come up, but I guess I messed up. Miami Herald journalist Julie Brown's reporting would later indicate as many as 80 girls had been abused by Jeffrey Epstein. Which is not good on its own. And so following his release, Maxwell and Epstein were no longer seen together publicly. And she turned her attention towards environmentalism, attending conferences around the world to promote her Terra Mar project. This was a project that it was self-described as an environmental nonprofit organization. It was founded in 2012, and apparently it engaged in ocean conservation, but which had no offices had no grants, and so, it would cease operations in 2019. And so then what do you think happens next? Of course, Miss Giuffre, I put in the little way of how do you pronounce her last name. The civil suit against Epstein would start in January of 2015. And the complainant alleging that Miss Maxwell had introduced her to Epstein on the pretext that he would pay for her services as a masseuse, but was actually intent on grooming her to provide sexual favors, also accusing her of engaging in the procurement and trafficking of other underage girls for the same purpose. This is when a lot more would start coming into action with what she's doing. And so, of course, she's going to deny these accusations, and she was sued by Giuffre in a defamation lawsuit. And so, but guess what? Jeffrey would win this case and force a substantial compensation payment in May of 2017. And so, obviously, there was some truth behind this. But in the meantime, Maxwell secretly gets married to Scott Borgerson. And this is where no one saw this coming. This was a surprise to everyone. Who is Scott Borgerson? He's a millionaire, founder of maritime analytics company Cargo Metrics. And he was 14 years younger than her. And she would conceal this union. No one knew about this until its exposure in December 2020. And so then, before you knew it, more cases were coming to light. Further cases were brought against Epstein. And this is where it's this is some crazy stuff by all means, right? Some craziness in this. And so now more are accusing him and Miss Maxwell of offenses of a sexual nature. And so Sarah Ransom, she brings this case in 2017. Jennifer Arauz, she brings this, her, Annie Farmer, and there's a Jane Doe 15 who was 15 years old at the time. And no, I don't know if her name's out there yet. And they're all accusing him in 2019. So with 2017 and 2019, everyone's bringing cases against them. And so, Epstein, he's arrested a second time on July 6th of 2019. And if you follow this story any, you kind of know where we're going with this. And, we're going to also talk about the women that testified. So Maxwell, after he gets arrested, Maxwell goes into hiding before she's arrested. No one knows where she's at. No one knows where she is at this time. So she goes into hiding, and no one really knows at the moment where she's at. And he's arrested a second time on July 6, 2019 at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. And now he's charged with sex trafficking and sex trafficking conspiracy. But he was found dead in his prison cell on August 10th before he could be tried. He allegedly committed suicide. And, a lot of people know about that. So she goes into hiding, and she's communicating with the courts through her lawyers. And now the FBI is investigating her for allegedly facilitating Epstein's criminal activities. And so her reps, they subsequently did launch a lawsuit. They launched a lawsuit against the estate of Epstein after his death to recoup her legal costs. And, she sued the estate to get money. And so eventually they catch up with her. July 2nd, 2021, she is found and arrested. And so now we do know what's happened since, but we're just going to follow through with what we're talking here. And so she is located and arrested on July 2nd at a house in Bradford, New Hampshire by the FBI. They tracked her mobile phone through calls made to Mr. Borgerson, her sister Isabel, and her legal representatives. I mentioned Borgerson earlier in this. And so they finally catch up with her. And so now then she was charged with enticement of minors, sex trafficking of children, and perjury. And so January 27th, 112 legal documents relating to her case. And within that case, so of course, she tries to get bail. And they're like, no, you were already in hiding. We're not going to give you bail. So she's denied bail after her July 14th hearing. And, it's because she represented a flight risk. And even on a second bail application, she was denied bail because of a flight risk. And so she was estimated to hold $22 million in assets and had set aside approximately $7 million to bankroll her defense. That's interesting. And so on January 25th of this year, actually we're in 2022 now. Today is January 1st, 2022. And so January of last year, her lawyers argued that the case against her was mishmash. That was his words. And should be thrown out given that it failed to identify an accuser or give a date on which a specific crime was alleged to have committed. And they tried to use that Cosby defense that got him out of jail. And it didn't quite work for him. And so of these 112 legal documents that were relating to her case, amounting to thousands of pages, they were made public. And there was one notable statement alleging Maxwell directed a room full of underage girls to kiss, dance, and touch one another in a sexual way for the defendant and Epstein to watch. That is just sick in too many ways. And so, it's obviously going into this did not look very good for her for obvious reasons. And so, according to her, the files also appear to show that she had said in a 2016 deposition that she had no prior knowledge of Epstein's behavior and only learned about it through the media, saying she heard about it like everybody else, like the rest of the world, when it was announced in the papers. And she had stopped working for him because she ceased to be happy in the job. And here's the truth. That is a lie. And considering that she did that in a deposition, there is where she's going to probably be facing some perjury charges there. And so, March 2021, prosecutors, they filed 2 additional charges against Miss Maxwell in their sex trafficking case, accusing Miss Maxwell of sex trafficking conspiracy and sex trafficking of a minor. And this superseding indictment extends the timeline of Miss Maxwell's alleged involvement in Epstein's abuse of young women to 2004. And even adds another victim, minor victim number 4. And so the previous indictment only dealt with events from 94 to 97, making that a 3-year span. But now it has been extended to a 10-year span because they weren't done after 97, obviously. And, so now she's going to be in prison. This is a little sketch done by someone, probably New York Post or something, of her with the short black hair talking to her attorney. And this is literally her and Epstein together. Kind of chilling if you ask me. And so, quick recap here. November 18th, the Miami Herald publishes a report detailing a previously secret deal that Epstein, a math teacher turned money manager, reached in 2007 with federal prosecutors probing allegations that he sexually abused minors at his Palm Beach, Florida mansion. He pleaded guilty to lesser state prostitution charges. In November of 2018 as well, the report brings widespread attention to the decades-old allegations against Epstein and Maxwell in the context of the hashtag #MeToo movement, which has encouraged women to speak out about abuse by powerful men like this guy Epstein. And in July of 2019, Epstein is arrested on charges of luring dozens of girls as young as 14, God, that's so sick, to his homes in New York and Florida and paying them for sex acts. Epstein, who pleaded not guilty, is placed on suicide watch after being found unconscious in his jail cell in Manhattan with neck injuries. He claims he was attacked by his cellmate and is taken off suicide watch less than a week later. And August 2019, Epstein's cellmate is transferred on August 9th. The following morning of August 10th, Epstein is found hanged in his cell while awaiting trial of federal sex trafficking charges. Medical examiners on August 16 ruled his death a suicide. I can definitely see why he would do that, because he's going to have a lot of hate towards him in the prison, and he knows a lot of people who he can throw under the bus. So that's also like why people question whether it was a suicide or something else. And so July 2020, Maxwell is arrested by the FBI in Bradford, New Hampshire on July 2nd. Federal prosecutors in New York charge her with procuring and transporting 3 minor victims for illegal sex acts. She is also charged with perjury for illegal sex acts. Perjury. Prosecutors accused her of lying during a deposition for a now settled civil defamation lawsuit brought by Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre. Maxwell pleads not guilty and vigorously denies the charges. U.S. District Judge Alison Nathan denies bail, saying Maxwell posed a flight risk. And so October 20th, the 2016 deposition Maxwell gave in Giuffre's lawsuit is made public. In the deposition, Maxwell denied seeing Epstein have sex with underage girls or helping him arrange illicit sexual encounters. What is she going to say? Hopefully the truth, but she didn't. And so March 29, 2021, prosecutors expand their case against Maxwell, filing a new indictment that charges her with sex trafficking involving a 4th victim. Maxwell recruited the victim in 2001 when she was 14 years old to engage in sex acts with Epstein, according to the indictment. April 23rd, 2021, Maxwell pleads not guilty to the new charges. August 13, 2021, judge rejects Maxwell's bid to dismiss her indictment on the grounds that she was immune to prosecution under the 2007 agreement Epstein made with prosecutors. Maxwell had argued that the deal, which was later widely criticized as too lenient, also covered accused co-conspirators like herself. November 16, 2021, Judge Nathan begins questioning more than 200 potential jurors for the case, asking about their own experiences with sexual abuse and their opinions about people with luxurious lifestyles. November 29, 2021, in the trial's opening statement, prosecutor Laura Pomerantz called Maxwell a predator who recruited girls for Epstein in order to maintain her luxurious lifestyle. Defense attorney Bobby Sternham countered that Maxwell was being unfairly targeted for Epstein's bad behavior. December 17, 2021, as this comes to a close, the defense rests its case after Maxwell declines to testify, telling Judge Nathan the prosecution has not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. December 20th of last year, in closing arguments, prosecutor Allison Moe said Maxwell's presence assuaged teenagers who otherwise would have found middle-aged Epstein creepy to spend time with and to touch. Defense lawyer Laura Menninger said Epstein kept many secrets from ex-girlfriend Maxwell, arguing prosecutors did not prove she knew about his activities with teenage girls. Maxwell was found guilty of 5 of the 6 federal counts she was charged with and faces up to 65 years in prison. After the verdict, this was all the people that were outside of the courts. And that, you have it, my friends. So I want to share with you some of what 4 women who testified at the trial that they said about this whole thing. What did Jane said? A woman identified in court by pseudonym Jane testified she met Maxwell and Epstein in '94 when she was 14 at a camp where he was a benefactor. Wow. She and her mother met Epstein for tea in Florida, and he said he could mentor her. She then started going to Epstein's home by herself. That's too young to be allowing that, if you ask me. At first, Maxwell and Epstein made her feel special, spending time with her. That's called grooming. Asking about her family and interests and taking her to do fun things, she said. For the first few months, Maxwell felt like an older sister. It changed when the abuse started happening, she said. Jane described in graphic detail incidents of sexual abuse with Epstein that Maxwell would at times join in on, both in Palm Beach, Florida and Manhattan when she was 14, 15, and 16. At times, Epstein would masturbate on her. Oh, God, that's so sick. Maxwell would sometimes be involved, touching her, and Epstein, she testified, at least once Maxwell instructed her how Epstein likes to be massaged while the three were in Epstein's massage room. She says it seemed very casual, like it was very normal, like it was not a big deal. It made me feel confused because that did not feel normal to me. It was not normal. She said it took her years before she was able to tell anyone about what happened, saying she felt shame and disgust and confusion. Now, on cross-examination, defense attorney, I gotta turn off those. On cross-examination, defense attorneys combed through her statements to law enforcement since 2019 to try to show inconsistencies with her testimony in court. And so, not liking all these stupid things. Getting a bunch of, I gotta turn my comments off in the future. And so, that was what Jane said. What did Kate say? Kate testified she first met Maxwell through an older boyfriend when she was 17. Maxwell invited her for tea at her London townhome and told Kate about Epstein, and later invited her again to meet him. There, Maxwell told her to give Epstein's foot a little squeeze to show him how strong she was despite her small frame. Kate testified Epstein approved of the foot massage and also had her massage his shoulders. A couple weeks later, Maxwell called Kate to ask whether she would do her a favor and come give Epstein a massage, even though she had no massage therapy experience. Maxwell led Kate upstairs in her townhome to a bedroom where Epstein stood in a robe, gave Kate massage oil, and closed the door behind her. Epstein disrobed and initiated a sex act with her. Maxwell called her back a second for another meeting with Epstein. I'm so glad you're here. You did such a good job last time that he wanted you to come back. This is according to Kate. This time, Epstein was standing naked when Maxwell brought Kate to the same room and closed the door behind her. Having a good time, Maxwell said as she left the room, according to the testimony. In her testimony, Kate testified she traveled at Epstein's expense several times to New York, Palm Beach, Florida, and Little St. James in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Epstein had property. Maxwell invited her to Epstein's private island to give her massages and would inform Kate of the travel arrangements. And so, during a visit to the Palm Beach residence when she was about 18, a schoolgirl outfit, a pleated skirt, white panties, white socks, and a shirt was left on her bed, according to her testimony. Wow. When she asked Maxwell what it was for, Maxwell said, "I thought it would be fun for you to take Jeffrey his tea in this outfit." Wow. Maxwell, you deserve this. You deserve what you're going to get. And so I'm going to move on to what Carolyn said, who also testified. Carolyn, who testified using her first name, said she was 14 years old when she began to go to Epstein's home in Palm Beach 2 or 3 times per week in early 2000. On one visit, Caroline was set was setting up a massage room for him when Maxwell came into the room. Maxwell touched Carolyn's breasts, hips, and buttocks and commented that she had a great body for Epstein and her friends. And his friends. Whew. Carolyn said she went to Epstein's over 100 times in all. Each time she visited, $300 in cash was left for her on the bathroom sink. Something sexual happened every single time, Carolyn said. I'm going to see any other quotes. No, let's see. Carolyn sobbed when prosecutor Maureen Comey asked if she was trying to get money for her testimony. No, money will not ever fix what that woman has done to me, because what she did was wrong, and she takes vulnerable young girls and traffics them, and I'm so petrified that my daughters are going to be trafficked. Whew. What did Annie Farmer say? Annie Farmer, who testified under her full name, has spoken out publicly about Epstein and Maxwell for years. She spoke in open court during both Epstein's 2019 bail hearing and Maxwell's bail hearing a year later. She testified for 3 hours, the fourth and final accuser to do so. And this was one that literally would pretty much put the nail in the coffin for Maxwell. Her older sister worked for Epstein, and Farmer met him during the 95 holiday season. Epstein paid for her commercial flight to New York, and at a movie held hands with her and caressed her foot. She described going to the billionaire's ranch in New York in 96 at age 16, where she thought she would be joining other peers, but she was the only teen there. And so she testifies, once she pulled down the sheet, I felt like kind of frozen. She being Maxwell. And it didn't make sense to me that would happen. I just wanted so badly to get off the table and have the massage be done. This is tough. And so on her last day at the ranch, Epstein bounded into her guest room, where she still lay in bed, telling her he wanted to cuddle. He climbed into bed with me and kind of laid behind me and reached his arms around me and pressed his body into me. Wow, that's terrible. Feeling uncomfortable, she made an excuse to get out of bed and went to the bathroom, closing the door behind her. Farmer said that while in New Mexico, they went to see the movie Primal Fear, where Epstein again caressed her in a more blatant way, seemingly making no effort to hide it from Maxwell, she recorded. Later that day, Maxwell insisted she teach Farmer how to massage Epstein's bare feet. This is some heinous stuff. This is the type of sick stuff that you must protect your kids from. And this is why I can understand Mama Bear, Papa Bear being overprotective, because there's such crazy, sick people out there. And this is a prime example of that. My friends, this has been another episode of Deep True Crime. If this is the type of cases or the type of stories you like me to cover, click that subscribe button, click that like button, and let me know you got some value by doing that. Let YouTube know you got some value by doing that. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today on Deep True Crime, where we cover the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, found guilty of sex trafficking, and Jeffrey Epstein, who knew he was going to be found guilty. And truth is, there's a book. There's a little book out there that I know a lot of famous people do not want it to be opened up. More will come, because right now she's looking at a 65-year sentence. If she gives up names, there's a good chance that will come down. But what will happen? Is Prince Andrew guilty? Is Donald Trump, who hung out with this guy a lot of times? We know Donald Trump has a history of not treating women like women. And he has a different dirty thought of what they should be like. I'm here to say that's not the right way, my friends. Don't be that person. Don't be that person. protect your loved ones, protect your young ones, and know something bad can go wrong really fast. I'm Manny Rodriguez with Deep True Crime. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great day and happy 2022. Peace.